Hello guys, welcome back to Lex. Sorry about the lack of posts. I've been studying for an exam which is now out of the way. I can now go back into posting a little bit more consistently or so. So this is going to be the last video that I'm planning to do for the 24-25 Championship team cluster, and we're going to move on officially moving forward to the 25 and 26 teams moving forward from this video onwards. So I'm going to give all the 24-25 teams a grade based on what they've achieved this season. As always guys, take this with a little pinch of salt. I'm just reflecting based on expectations and have they met those expectations. There's certainly going to be a huge variety of different grades, and quite honestly, the grade that I do give to your championship club is not a full representative of what everyone's going to think of their season. This is personally my opinion. And let me know what you think of what your team has done. What would you grade your team in the comments down below? I'm very interested to hear your thoughts on whether you agree with my grades, whether I've been a bit too harsh, or maybe I've been a bit too generous with a couple. I will be very interested to know. If you guys like what I see, please smash the like button. It really does help the growth of this channel. 50 likes will be absolutely appreciated. Please do hit the subscribe button too, as we're trying to get to 3,000 subscribers. We're not far away now. Thank you guys as always for the terrific support on this channel, and please also share the channel too. They are all free to do and they really help. To continue my appreciation of our recent subscribers, here are a couple more who I'm going to shout out who have recently subscribed to the channel. Eric Romero, Dean McKay, Sam Duke, Dembera Shari, Alfie, Alvaro Acantra, Tommy68, Chris Horton, Ranguri Martin Gituka, Bruh, Dom Berry, Football, Stevie Watsa, and Red Howland. Thank you guys so much for recently subscribing to the channel. It really does not go unnoticed, and I truly appreciate every single one of you choosing to spend your time watching Let's Alexis. But without any further ado, let's start grading every championship team's season. Blackburn Rovers, B. Blackburn's season has been split up by 3 separate campaigns. They obviously had an unbelievable start with John Eustace, and then the manager drama of him leaving Blackburn in the style that he did, and then that period for Valérien Ismaël was initially very, very bad, but then it ended up being okay in the end, and Blackburn were the team that narrowly missed out on the playoffs in 7th place. So I think mixing the different contrasts of those campaigns, I think 7th place is a positive finish for Blackburn. It shows that they are a team, if run correctly, they can be a team knocking on the door for playoffs, but whether they'll stay up there remains to be seen. But I think a B grade is fair enough. Bristol City, A-. I mean, do I have any reason not to give Bristol City an A-? Well, maybe down to how they capitulated in the playoffs against Sheffield United. But the fact of the matter is, they made the playoffs. Bristol City have not been in the Championship playoffs in over 17 years. It's been absolutely insane for Bristol City to enter into the conversation of clubs who could have been promoted to the Premier League. It shows clear signs of progression. For next season though, it'll be interesting because it has been confirmed that Liam Manning is leaving Bristol City to join Norwich. So disappointment on Bristol City's part. I would love to hear Bristol City fans in the comments to talk through their current state going into next season. Who could they get in to replace Manning? I know Rob Edwards has been linked with the position. Would that be a positive change? Let me know in the comments. But certainly for the 24-25 season alone, I think it's got to be an A- for Bristol City. Burnley, A+. So, Burnley didn't win the title, and they've got the maximum grade possible. Why? Well, the expectations would have expected Burnley to be up there. I get that, but I think it's the manner that they got up is what's earning them this A+. 100 points for a start is rare to do these days in the Championship. 16 goals conceded all season, and that's a 46 game season. To only concede 16 goals is unbelievable. And in fact, it's actually probably 1 goal conceded in about 3 matches. I think that's the maths. That is absolutely unbelievable. They beat the clean sheet record for this season as well. So Burnley beating all sorts of positive defensive records, which is absolutely brilliant for their 24-25 season. So for those reasons, I think they've got to get the maximum grade A+. But do you agree with me? Should they have been expected to finish top 2? Does that devalue their grade a little bit? Let me know what you think in the comments. Cardiff City, F. I mean, you got relegated, Cardiff. I don't really have any sort of scientific reason why I shouldn't give you an F. A lot of us were predicting you to finish probably not like blowing us away in this 24-25 season, but certainly not getting relegated, and that's exactly what has happened. So certainly below expectations. Finishing rock bottom as well, I think, was a big disappointment as well. Poor decisions throughout the season, which has ultimately left you with an F grade. Ironically, not the lowest grade I'm actually going to give out in this video, because I do think the resources for Cardiff are not particularly strong in the Championship. So a relegation, whilst it was a massive shock, the quality of the squad's perspective doesn't make that a massive surprise. So certainly an F. Cardiff have now got to work really, really hard to get back for what I deem is their comfort zone in the Championship. Coventry City, B. I really struggled with Coventry. I really did, because I do think there's high expectations one end, but then you've got to balance that with perspective and the season that they've had to even get to the position that they got themselves. It was a dreadful start to this 24-25 season under Mark Robins. It felt like that he got enough out of it, and I just don't think he had anything else left in him to push this Coventry side to reach those same high standards. It's an improvement on their position from last season, so I will acknowledge that. And the impact that Frank Lampard provided with his Coventry squad when he came in was massive. So I do think getting 5th place, it is an improvement on their league position from last season. Disappointing that they didn't go through to the semi-final, but again, very, very tight circumstances. A last-minute winner for Sunderland is what killed Coventry's chances. So ultimately, it's a very a nearly season for Coventry, because had they made the playoff final, I think they would have offered Sheffield United a little bit of a game. But it's another season in the Championship, but there is some optimism around Coventry. So in the end, I've debated about giving them sort of around a goodish grade, and I think a grade B reflects that. Let me know what you think in the comments. Derby, B+. I think I've got to give Derby a B+, which is a better grade than Coventry's, but Derby would have been one of the favourites to get relegated from this 24-25 season. They survived, and I've got to say the decision of getting John Eustace in the way that they did, it took a bit of time, but when he got his run of form together, it proved to be a managerial masterstroke and a brilliant decision under lots of pressure, because Derby were in free fall at one point under Paul Warne, and they made a very ballsy decision to get a manager out of another Championship club, but it worked out for both parties some way or another in the end. So Derby surviving, and the fact that they didn't finish 21st, they actually exceeded my expectations a little bit. Obviously were very close to relegation and did have to secure survival on the final day. But the fact of the matter is, they looked dead and buried at one stage of the season, and they survived. So I think gaining that survival gives them a B grade, and I think the manner that they did it gives them a higher end of a B grade. So certainly a really, really good performance from Derby this season. Hull City, E. Oh dear me, Hull. This has certainly been the team who I think have dropped the most places regarding the Championship seasons. So they were 7th in the season before, and they finished 1 place above the relegation zone this season. Now, I think Hull was a side that was polarising in views with a lot of us, and differing opinions of how Hull were going to do. And ultimately, the squad was bare bin of quality, and in the end, they just got enough points within them and enough good results to get them to survive. And I think Ruben Sellers was a big contribution to that. So that decision to get him in prevents them getting an F grade, but an E, because certainly position-wise and expectations way below standards. But to dismiss Ruben Sellers with the work that he had to do with the circumstances, I think was very harshly done by for him to be dismissed. So certainly Hull next year are going to be an interesting one to watch, but E, poor season from Hull City standards. Leeds, A+. I mean, they're champions. I don't think I could give Leeds anything less than an A+, honestly. And there's that argument that Leeds with the parachute payments, alongside with Burnley, you know, they would have been given a little bit of financial backing to win the championship title. But again, to get 100 points to bounce back from the playoff disappointment from the season before, I just think that contributes to an A+. The amounts of goals that they scored as well, absolutely insane. And I'm pleased for Leeds that they are now back into the Premier League. Luton Town, ungraded. I mean, can you back me up on this? I think we all predicted Luton to be in around the playoffs or thereabouts, and they finished in the relegation zone. They had so many players who are really, like on paper, good quality championship players who stank up the joint and were really underperforming for the majority of the season. There was a small glimpse of hope when Matt Bloomfield came in, but ultimately it's ended in relegation. No one predicted back-to-back relegations for Luton Town. It has been a disaster of a season, and right now they may be one of the favourites to get out of League One, but certainly they really have had a season to forget for this season. Middlesbrough, D. I mean, a top 10 finish wouldn't necessarily be a D grade, but for Middlesbrough standards, they have been a team fighting around the playoffs for the past couple of seasons, and this is definitely a step down in terms of their achievements from their previous seasons. And what has been more disappointing for Middlesbrough is for the fact that whilst they've won quite a few games, they've not drawn enough of the games with the games that they've lost. So they've lost lots of games as well. They missed loads of chances and it cost them. And actually, only just now from starting recording this video, Michael Carrick has been let go from Middlesbrough. He has been dismissed. So I do think that D grade is justified because Middlesbrough have underperformed from expectations. Middlesbrough fans, let me know of your thoughts of Michael Carrick going in the comments. What sort of manager do you want to step in? Millwall, B. Yeah, I think that's fair for Millwall. They finished around 8th. I think that's a decent position for Mill to be in, to be competing again, fighting for the playoffs, and it did go to the final day, although it would have taken a lot for Millwall to get in. But despite that, I do think it is positive strides from last season, and I think certainly the turbulence that they've had from the off-the-field stuff with their owner and Sarkic passing away quite recently, I think they dealt with that really well. And actually now, I do think there's a really exciting squad for Millwall, and with a capable championship manager in Alex Neil, I will be interested to see what he does. And I think there's certainly a bit of optimism, certainly a good step up from last season. I think a B grade is justified. I think they've not only met expectations, but have exceeded a couple as well, which is great. Norwich, D-. This is a tough one for me because Norwich are in a cluster of teams that have been in a really, competitive cluster of teams in the Championship, but have fallen short from what they would have expected to do from this season. Johannes Thorup didn't prove to be a good fit for Championship football. They lost way too many games on the road. They conceded way too many goals in the end. And ultimately, I think with the attacking flair that they have in that squad, to finish in the lower half of the Championship is nothing form of disgraceful, really. It is not a great season for Norwich. Although, if they are getting Liam Manning in, which I think could even be confirmed later today, I think that is a positive move for the Championship. A proven Championship manager who can get a lot out from a little. We saw that with Bristol City last season. So, I do think there may be a positive tide of momentum of the way of Norwich, but I do think their poor finish to their last season is going to encourage some of their attacking players to leave, because there is interest around for Sargent and Sainz. I think this will certainly be a Norwich team who would have to face a lot of adversities, but the potential is there that they can improve on this 13th place for last season, but a D- will have to be justified for definitely meeting below expectations. Oxford United, A. Maybe the most controversial grade of the whole list, because you would argue for Oxford United's success is an A+. Well, I would have given them an A+ if they finished in the top half and even made me look even more silly than what they already made me. But you've got to say, Oxford have had one of the smallest budgets going up from League One to the Championship. They not only survived, but they didn't even need to get a good result on the final day of the season to guarantee that survival. That is unbelievable that Oxford have managed to achieve that. They had some good results at the start. Des Buckingham probably got as far as he could in terms of keeping this team consistent in the Championship. Gary Rowett came in. A brilliant master stroke to get him in, and he got that Oxford United team set. And he got to survive, I've got to say, relatively comfortably in the end. And with him in charge, I could really only see Oxford improving under him, unless they lose quite a few of their players, which I'm pretty sure a couple of them are linked with moves away. Then potentially Oxford could struggle. But I think with a manager as good as Gary Rowett, I'm struggling to convince myself that Oxford will have second season syndrome. I really, really don't. So, well done to Oxford. You've certainly got the highest grade out of the newly promoted clubs. Plymouth, C-. I could see this grade being polarising from the viewers. I can probably see a lot of disagreement already in terms of this, because Plymouth are a team that have been relegated. It is 2 places dropped from last season, but context is key. I think with Wayne Rooney's tenure, it would have been an F or an F-. It was absolutely dreadful with Wayne Rooney in charge. Miran Muslic comes in, and honestly, his tenure, I would have given a B+, if not an A-. So, compromising those opposite ends of the grade spectrum, I'm kind of lent in the middle of that, which would be a C-, probably because of their relegation as well. But the fact that they took it to the final day, I mean, arguably they were already down leading to the final day, but mathematically, points-wise, they still had it all to do in the final day to get a result. Unbelievable, really, that they actually were as close as they were for getting survival. But unfortunately for Plymouth, they're going to have to endure a season in League One. They're losing Muslic. I believe it was Schalke or one of the other Bundesliga 2 clubs that was interested of taking them on. So this is going to be an interesting season for Plymouth to see if they can bounce back to the heights of the Championship. Portsmouth, A-. So they did finish 1 place above Oxford in the end, and I'm giving them a lower grade than Oxford, but I would argue Portsmouth had a stronger squad going in from League One to the Championship. They did have it tough at the start, of course, with their really difficult run of games, but trusting that their quality players were going to recover from injury and they were going to have an easier set of games, they eventually started to get the momentum a lot of us were expecting from Portsmouth going up from League One to the Championship. They certainly exceeded expectations, finishing as high as they did, so I do think that A- grade is justified, and I think with positive momentum, I think Portsmouth are more likely to go up a couple of places rather than fall down a couple of places. Preston North End, D-. This was another one which I struggled with, because I was kind of thinking, was it expected that Preston were going to fall down to 20th, their lowest Championship position since getting promoted 10 seasons ago? I do wonder that their recruitment's just stagnated a little bit, and I think part of that would be due to players leaving. I just don't think it's one of the younger squads in the league. I do think investment is overdue for this Preston side, and I think we were going to see some issues of inconsistency, and that is something that Paul Heckingbottom is now trying to deal with Preston at the moment, and is seemingly looking a little bit frustrated in the lack of quality in the squad and the lack of investment in this squad. So I do see Preston, if they don't pull their finger out, they could be a team in danger. But ultimately, it is exactly what we were expecting for Preston, but then just a very strange capitulation in form going into the end of the season, which is why they are at the lower end of a D grade. Queen's Park Rangers, C. I think Queen's Park Rangers, looking at a lot of these teams, have had the most meh season. They've had times of quality, times of not looking that good at all, and I think overall I'm just kind of stuck in the middle with them, and I think at this moment a C grade justifies their 15th place finish. Maybe it's a tiny bit below for what a lot of us were thinking, but it is a comfortable mid-table position, and ultimately I don't see too much quality, if that might be a bit controversial for me to say, in that Queen's Park Rangers squad, in all honesty. I think there's some really good individuals, but I think 15th, maybe a little bit below for a lot of us were thinking, but the fact of the matter is they've been safe for the majority of the season and just kind of left me a little bit uninspired with their finish. So an uninspiring grade, a C. I think that is what is justified with Queen's Park Rangers. Sheffield United, B-. This was another team I struggled to grade, and certainly tightest of margins would have made their grade a whole lot more different. I can't ignore the fact that they got 90 points. It is very, very harsh for them to get 90 points and get promoted in the end. However, it is a squad stacked full of quality players who are too good for the Championship for me. I think the competition was certainly very, very tough for Sheffield United. I mean, to have two teams reach over 100 points is unbelievable in itself. So I don't think we're going to see like high standards of competition like this ever again, personally. And with Sheffield United's point of view, they just had the momentum on their side going into the playoff final, took the lead, and then second half capitulated, and that capitulation has really damaged my thoughts on their mentality and the progress that they have made. So B-, I think it's going to have to be in the end. They would have wanted to get promoted. I mean, they have to get at least some form of a B grade for getting into the playoff final or in the top 6, but yeah, certainly the lower end of that because of the circumstances. Sheffield Wednesday, C+. There was actually a time where I actually gave both Sheffield clubs the same grade, but I don't think I would have got out of the comments section alive if I did so. I think there has to be a little bit of a discrepancy between the two. But I do think with Sheffield Wednesday's point of view, they finished literally just right bang slap in the middle of the table in 12th place. It is an improvement from their position last season. So I think with that improvement, I think it has justified that they're getting around that C grade. But I do think that there were moments where Sheffield Wednesday did fall short with their form. And I do think that does prevent them getting to a B grade. But then we got to think about circumstances as well. We've had cash flow problems from the owner, Shinsiri, for various parts of the season, more notably in March, which is still during the campaign. So the fact of the matter is the fact that there were some really, really bad run of forms in and around that region of time, I'm now not too shocked of that because the club were in and operating in an uncertain turn of events. It's happened again in May, and it could end up with Sheffield Wednesday getting a transfer embargo. They could even have a points deduction. If this is an area you would like me to have a deeper dive in to look through what has gone wrong with the business side of Sheffield Wednesday and why they've had cash flow issues, let me know, and I'll do a little bit of research into the biggest mistakes in their ways and potentially thinking of solutions that they could come up with regarding those issues. But I think a C+, but in all reflections with the difficulties that they had, but then also the weighted expectations of Danny Rowe, I think it has to be in the end a C+. I think had they got top 10, it would have been a B grade. Stoke City, D. Stoke have finished their lowest finish since getting relegated from the Premier League back in 2018. So I do think it's not been a positive season for Stoke. They had a terrible start again with a manager being changed, in Schumacher leaving and Mark Robbins coming in his place. And it wasn't entirely convincing with Robbins either, but they just again picked up enough positive results to take them away from the relegation fears. So I do think Stoke should really look at this season as a bit of a wake-up call that they're only going one trend, and that is getting lower by place and place from season to season. They've got to now invest sufficiently but smartly to try and climb back up the table. I just think the championship in this region is getting so competitive now, and I just see Stoke being a side that I think still a little bit sorry for themselves that they're in this position and they've not had one standout great season since getting relegated. So I do think Stoke need to hit the refresh button, which we typically say every single year, but they really need to now stick with a crop of players which they can commit to a long-term project to try and slowly but surely get them to climb up the table, because right now they're not climbing, they're regressing down the table, and they really need to act fast because they could easily be a team dragged into the relegation battle if they do not improve. Sunderland, A+. I think I have to give him an A+. I mean, I already gave the other two promoted teams an A+, and certainly Sunderland deserves one as well. They got a manager in Reggie Labrie, which some were excited, some were a bit sceptical. I was in the sceptical side of you, who had not managed a game of English football. He comes in, an unbelievable start from Sunderland. Then they fell away when they had injuries around in the January time. Got those playoffs secured and fought just about the playoffs. And their league form did suffer for it. But getting promoted was what they needed, and they got the job done. So I've got to say, I think Sunderland have earned that A+. They now return back into the Premier League for the first time in 8 seasons, unbelievably. So I think for them to get that achievement, and it would have been a club that not many would have predicted would have got promoted. So they've more than exceeded expectations. A+. Swansea City, B+. I think Swansea have had a good season. Would you agree, Swansea City fans, if you've had a good season? Top half, I think, is still a good step up from their last season. I think considering the turbulence they had with Williams at the first half of the season with their league position, they were not looking too great. They were around the bottom 8, and then Sheehan comes, well, he doesn't come in, but he steps up into the position, and he does get a good streak of form for the Swansea side. There's a good bit of optimism about Swansea going into next season, so I certainly think there's enough positives there that has earned Swansea with a B+. I think they are heading into the right direction. I like the style of football that they're playing. They have lost players over a couple of seasons and are still recovering quite well. So I've got to say, I think Swansea are going about their business right. Watford, D+. So this was a tough one for me to grade. Obviously, they finished one place lower than Norwich, and I'm giving them a higher grade than Norwich. Why? Well, I think we've got to remember the circumstances. Watford were in very difficult circumstances. The quality of their squad wasn't great. They had a really bad momentum in the season before that, and I think a lot of us were thinking Watford were going to struggle. And in the end, they ended up 14th. It wasn't too far off from what a lot of us were predicting, but they had a great start. And unfortunately, Watford's curse strikes again, where they do typically start well, but then they run out of steam. And unfortunately, they just nowhere near picked up enough positive results in 2025. It was left to Tom Cleverley getting dismissed, and Pezzanano is now coming in as Watford's manager. I'm going to be interested to see how he gets on. Watford fans, let me know what you think of this last season and how you approaching next season. Do you want a big step up from 14th place, or are you realistically looking at this thinking, right, we might be around mid-table for a little bit of time until eventually we can start climbing up again? I'll be interested to hear your thoughts in the comments. West Bromwich Albion, C-. So we end today with West Brom, and this is again such a tough one for me to grade because they've had 2 entirely different seasons combined into one elongated season. I certainly think the expectations on West Brom were very mixed. Some thought that West Brom would do okay. Others were really scared for West Brom because of the financial and background noise that they were getting coming into the 24-25 season. In the end, it didn't look like it affected West Brom so badly. They just let their performances on the pitch do the talking. Corberán did really, really well to get West Brom in around the region of the top 6. Obviously, circumstances happened and he left to join Valencia. Tony Mowbray came in, and whilst he had an okay start, in the end of it, they really struggled at the end of the season and had a poor run of form where they were in a really prominent position to get into the playoffs, but they've fallen into ninth. Disappointing in the end, but I certainly think from enough goodness from the first part of the season, it has at least got them into around the C grade region. But I think with the disappointing manner of how it finished, I think it's got to be a C- from West Brom. So there you have it, guys. That is me grading every single team's season for the 24-25 Championship campaign. Do you agree? Let me know in the comments. Do you want me to do this for the Premier League, League One, or any other leagues? Let me know in the comments down below if you enjoyed this concept. If you guys want to see more from the channel, please like, subscribe, and share. All of this is free to do. It really is massively appreciated for this channel. It really helps. So that'll wrap it up. Thank you guys so much for watching. You guys are legendary if you saw any of this video. And as always, I'll see you guys soon. Take care, everyone.